العبد الذي كسب الذنوب وصدته الأماني أن يتوب. أنا العبد الذي سطرت عليه صحائف لم يخاف فيها الرقيبة. أنا العبد المسيء عصي.
إن الحمد لله نحمده سبحانه ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله تعالى فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد، فأوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله عز وجل، فقد أمرنا الله تعالى بذلك في كتابه الكريم، فقال تعالى: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. وقال تعالى: يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. ثم أما بعد. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, in researching this khutbah, I came across a story of a police officer in Saudi Arabia, a Muslim police officer, and because he dealt in traffic accidents, it became his path to return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The officer writes that very often when there's a traffic accident and there's no time for the ambulance to come and they know the person's going to die, he said as a rookie officer, with his senior, they once came across an accident and they were on patrol, and these two cars, one of the cars had gone into the opposite lane with a dead-on, head-on collision. And of course, in one of the cars were two youths, and in the other car they had found that the other person was dead. The two officers, they took the body of those youth one by one gently away from the car, and they sat there and they realized that they were going to die. And so the senior officer who had experience with this, he took the advantage to help those youth say La ilaha illallah. And he would do the talqeen of shahada, saying softly to them, say La ilaha illallah, so that it would be the final words that they would say before they die. As the Prophet ﷺ said, Man kana akhiru kalamihi La ilaha illallah dakhala al-jannah. Whoever's last words are La ilaha illallah shall enter paradise. And as he sat there, this officer, the junior, he said he saw something very horrific. And what it was is that those youth, every time they were told to say La ilaha illallah, all they would reply or they would continue to sing the song that they were listening to in the car. And they kept singing it, and they wouldn't acknowledge La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. And you may have heard it in the past, and I've actually read this, and it's not something that just happens once and then it never happens again. In fact, today at our school, our Islamic school, Al-Huda, we had a police officer, a Muslim officer, who had converted or reverted to Islam during the Gulf War. He's now working as a police officer in Maryland. And I asked him this, I said, I'm going to do a khutbah today. Is this true? And he said, I swear by Allah that it's true. He said, I personally have seen people right before they're about to die, saying that they're coming to get me, they're coming to get me. Some person would be taking his drugs and his alcohol and he's about to die during the war, and then he just gets up and starts screaming that they're coming to get me, they're coming to get me. And he's talking about the angels of death coming to him. And then he would lose his life. And he said, I've seen other people who on their last breath, in their last moments, they would say, Oh Allah, forgive me. And he would see Iraqi soldiers being killed. He saw Iraqi soldiers who were burned to a crisp, dead, and they were dead in sajda. He said they didn't want to fight and they were pushed out to the fight. But he said that when the bombs came and they were killed, they went and did sajda to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and their lives were taken in those cases. And he said it is true. And people on their last moments, when their tongue is sealed, only their heart began speaking. And so these youth who didn't live the life of La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, they didn't die upon it. And when it came down to what's in their heart, what came out were the songs that they were listening to. And believe me, if you take any song and you want to know whether music is halal or haram, just take the lyrics of the song. Don't even worry about the music behind it. But just listen to those lyrics and you'll know for yourself that it's wrong. Ubay ibn Khalaf was one of the kuffar in Mecca. They used to challenge and hurt the Prophet ﷺ. Ubay ibn Khalaf, you can say he was a scientist, or he claimed to be a scientist. He took a bone, his evidence, a rotted bone, and in front of everybody he confronted the Prophet ﷺ, and he crushed the bone in his hand and let the wind blow away the dust of the bone. And then he said to the Prophet ﷺ, do you claim that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to bring this dust back to life? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comments on what Ubay did. He says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, أَوَلَمْ يَرَ الْإِنسَانُ أَنَّا خَلَقْنَاهُ مِن نُطْفَةٍ فَإِذَا هُوَ خَصِيمٌ مُبِينٌ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, hasn't man considered that we created him from a drop of semen? فَإِذَا هُوَ خَصِيمٌ مُبِينٌ. Yet he becomes an open adversary to the Lord that created him. وَضَرَبَ لَنَا مَثَلًا وَنَسِيَ خَلْقَهُ قَالَ مَنْ يُحْيِي الْعِظَامَ وَهِيَ رَمِيمٌ. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, He makes up something to be compared. He tries bringing an analogy. He brings this bone and He crushes it and He tries making the analogy. وَضَرَبَ لَنَا مَثَلًا وَنَسِيَ خَلْقَهُ. He said, He makes the analogy, but He forgets His own creation. وَنَسِيَ خَلْقَهُ قَالَ مَنْ يُحْيِي الْعِظَامَ وَهِيَ رَمِيمٌ. He says, who will bring back the bones when they have become dust? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says back to him. And for those that think that the Qur'an is only for Muslims and that you can't argue with the Qur'an was revealed to people that did not believe in the Qur'an. And you will find your arguments there in the Qur'an. And everything that the people say today down the hallways of this university, you will see that the people, the kuffar of Quraysh, said the exact same things. The exact same things, and I'll show you what they said. The same issues. And in fact, you'd see that the kuffar of Quraysh may have been much smarter, and they brought more arguments than common people would today. قَالَ مَنْ يُحْيِي الْعِظَامَ وَهِيَ رَمِيمٌ. Who will bring the bones back to life after they become rotten and dusted and dirt? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replied for the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, قُلْ يُحْيِيهَا الَّذِي أَنشَأَهَا أَوَّلَ مَرَّةٍ. Say, the same person, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that brought that bone into existence the first time, that brought that bone into existence from nothing, and sha'aha awwala marra, that Allah is the one who's going to bring it back to life. And in fact, everybody knows to bring nothing from nothing, or to bring something from nothing is much harder than to bring something from something. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is bringing the bones to life, but He forgets His creation when He was nothing. This topic of, and inshallah we're going to be talking about regret. This topic, I was researching on the internet and I found a website where the author of the website, or the webmaster, he encourages those readers to write in their biggest regret of their lives. And going through, samples of those regrets, you'll see people that their regrets never go beyond the dunya. Someone regrets a lost love. Someone else regrets a job that they missed out on. Someone else regrets, some twist of fate that led to something bad, and so on. But what I'd like to see is a website where dead people write their regrets. These are living people. People who don't know and don't believe in what's to come next. But if you bring a website and you interview all the dead people and you ask them, what was your biggest regret? What was your biggest regret? I don't even have to answer because we all know what their regret is. Ali radiallahu anhu, he stood at the grave, and with him was a companion, and then he said to his companion, he said, if this person could write a regret letter, he didn't say that, but he said that if they had a chance to come back, what would they do? What would be their biggest regret? And his companion said, "O Ali, that they, radiallahu anhu, that they would do nothing except good deeds. They would change their lives, turn away from all the haram things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made haram on them. They now see the truth. They would turn their lives and they would do nothing but good deeds." And then Ali radiallahu anhu told him, he said, if it's not going to be them, then let it be you. If it's not going to be them, then not going to be him, then let it be you. And I tell you, dear brothers and sisters, the fact that you're sitting here listening, you have that chance. You have the chance to come back to life. That chance to come back and turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The problem is that many people, and you'll see Orientalists have knowledge of Islam, even Shaitan has knowledge of Islam, but there are people that haven't allowed that knowledge to penetrate into their hearts. Now some Muslims have allowed that knowledge of the deen to penetrate their tongue, but that knowledge dropped its bags on the tongues and it didn't continue into the heart. And you will see that when things are being when the muharramat, the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbade are cut and people transgress that. It's not that someone doesn't know the ruling. You will see that whenever the shaykh comes, you'll see that he's always saying haram, haram, haram. And I'll tell you why. Because the people are asking questions about things they know that are haram. That it went into their hearts. And they realize that what they're doing is wrong. مَا حَاكَ فِي نَفْسِكَ. That it keeps scratching away at their heart. They know it's wrong. That's why they're asking the shaykh. Maybe trying to find someone that won't say that it's haram. But that's why the haram questions come up. Because these are things that are scratching away at the person's heart. Now there are scholars and ulama of the past that allowed their iman to go beyond their tongue and to go into their heart. And Muhammad ibn Abi Imran rahimahullah narrates that his shaykh Hatim al-Asam was one of those people that reached that stage. And he asked him, how did you reach the stage of tawakkul ala Allah, reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And he said that I became convinced in four things, i.e. that he allowed those four things to penetrate his heart. He said, one, he said, I'm convinced that no one is going to eat the provision that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed for me except me. Nobody else is going to eat it. No one is going to come and steal it from me. If Allah decreed that I'm going to have this food and this money, then I'm going to have it and no one can take it away. He said, so I'm satisfied and content with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me. And he said, two, I'm convinced that there's not a single person that's going to do good works on my behalf. So I'm convinced of this. So فَأَنَا مَشْغُولٌ بِعَمَلٍ. He said, so I am busy in doing the good works myself. And in fact, just a point here, you'll see that people, they have in their houses, they'll have the Quran divided into 30 parts. And I'm sure everyone has seen that. You'll have a Quran, a big stack of divisions, 30 parts, wrapped around in a beautiful cloth. And I ask you, why do you think it's divided into 30 parts? It's divided into 30 parts because when someone dies, they're going to bring it out and everybody's going to read Quran on his behalf. They're going to do good works on his behalf. And after that Quran Khani is over, it gets wrapped up and continues to collect dust again. It's just a symbol that we've neglected the Quran and that we think that the Quran is only for the dead people. But nay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the Quran for the living. He says, three, that I'm certain that death shall come unexpectedly. He says, I'm not going to get a warning 5 days before death is coming. Hey, death is going to come in 5 days, so you better prepare for it. He said, I know that's not going to happen, and so I'm waiting for the unexpected. And he said, and fourthly, I'm certain. And subhanAllah, one tilmeed, one student, just this fourth point, if someone was to penetrate his heart with this point, if he would be able to move forward in his entire life towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, fourthly, and I am certain that I will never escape the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so I am shy of Him.